Braves and baseball fans, it's time to take a trip from coast to coast across Major League Baseball.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Fly ball deep left center. Grissom on the run. Yes! Yes! The Atlanta Braves have given you a championship. Listen to this crowd.
Left side, Swanson to first. Braves are world champions.
Braves and baseball talk, straight from the diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation.
Here's Grant McAuley.
Hello and welcome to From the Diamond. I am Grant McAuley. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, the Kia Studios on a sunny Sunday as the Braves closed out their weekend work against the Milwaukee Brewers. It was a bit of a clunker, and that might be putting it lightly for Atlanta on Sunday, but don't let it take the shine off the fact that the Braves had two of their biggest wins of quite possibly the season on both Friday and Saturday. It was the way they happened. It was the way the Braves did it that gave you a little bit of a reminder that even a team going through it the way the Braves have been over the past couple of weeks, it might find itself back to some sense of what feels like normalcy. So a lot to talk about from this weekend series against the Milwaukee Brewers, and we're going to get into all of it. Before we do, though, I want to remind you, as always, you can find From the Diamond wherever you get your podcast. You can also find it right here on the Odyssey app and Sports Radio 92.9 The Game on Sundays, usually from 5 to 7 is where you can tune in and find this 2 hours of Braves and baseball talk. We have a lot to get to, but subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on social media at Grant McAuley on most platforms, and FromTheDiamond.com. That's a heck of a place to get links to everything else I've got going on. Going to be doing a lot of things over the next week or so. Very excited about many of those. We'll talk about them as the show goes along. Of course, the Braves are going out west, and that'll give us a little bit of time to do a few things before first pitch for several of these days coming up with the Padres and the Giants on the schedule. But I think the biggest thing I would say right off the top of this show and right off the top for the Braves is you had to get back to the business of winning. And after the week they had, and that may seem like an obvious statement, and we do make a few of those on the show, but we like to back them up with reasons. And the reason, obviously, is the Braves have been going through their first extended stretch of real struggle. Now, this is a team that's faced some adversity and faced some injuries this year, but the way things started to unravel on the Braves when they went on the two-city road trip up to Chicago to play the White Sox on the south side, a very much improved Chicago White Sox team, as we knew they would be, and then got our first look at the New York Mets up in New York, and things got sideways there as well. So back-to-back series there, and then coming on home to face a Giants team that was, 15 games under 500 that you thought, okay, well, maybe this will be the get-right series, and it certainly was not. The weather did not cooperate. Injuries started to pile up for this team. They even had travel problems. Everything just seemed to be kind of going wrong, and you're not going to find anybody down there. And I talked to a lot of folks over the course of the week that wants to point to any of those things and say, all right, yeah, we wanted to win, but this happened and this happened and this happened. No, the expectation is to win. But as you looked at everything that was piling up, you could certainly understand how things were going from bad to worse on a few of those days for the Braves. And you knew that the offense, the pitching, and pretty much everything in between, there were going to be some highs and lows and the ebbs and flows of a season that Walt Weiss always talks about. And even though Atlanta got off to a start of winning, 19 of its first 22 series, there are at least pockets on social media that kind of started to feel like, hey, maybe the sky's fallen. Maybe the Braves are turning back into the 2025 club, and I'm not convinced of that, even though a couple of these series certainly left a lot to be desired as far as the kind of baseball you were seeing. This is just kind of part and parcel to the 162. That just kind of comes with it. You're not always going to look your best. And I think I talked to Matt Olson a couple of years ago. It's, you're not always going to look your best. You're not always going to be, or you're not always as good as you are when you're great, and you're not always as bad as you are when you're at your worst. It's usually found somewhere in between. I like to call that little spot the aggregate for the entire team as well, because it takes a village a lot of times to turn something like this around. And that brings us back full circle. Promise there's a point to all this, to Friday night. And Friday night looked like, for a team that had lost 6 of 7, that had been having offensive struggles, that had gone through some injuries, that had had all the other things I just laid out, and now you get to face maybe the best pitcher on planet Earth, Jacob Misiorowski, who does not seem to want to give up runs and does not seem to want to lose. And those are things that you should have every pitcher aspiring to, but he has the kind of stuff that really underscores how exactly you can get that done every fifth day, because the Miz, as he is called, has looked absolutely terrific and is making a case for National League Cy Young, and I don't know that it's going to be particularly close. And remember about a year ago, we were kind of debating, does this kid has he done enough to be showcased at the All-Star game, an exhibition where you kind of want people to get eyeballs on maybe your most exciting players, but I digress. No, maybe he didn't have the All-Star resume of some others, but it sure made a lot of sense. And if you were looking at that as kind of the sneak preview type season, well, all Mizrowski has done in 2026 is give you and show you all the proof for why he is who we thought he would be, and that is one of the most dominating strikeout pitchers you're going to find. Jason Stark of The Athletic, friend of the show, he's been on several times. He caught up with Nolan Ryan, of all people, to get an idea of, how do you put into perspective what Mizrowski's doing? And even Nolan Ryan was like, look, the kid's blessed. The kid's got a gift. And that's some high praise from a guy that is pretty much synonymous with the radar gun in Nolan Ryan. But the Braves had to figure out a way to beat an absolute ace. And they were able to figure out how to do it on Friday. And how exactly was it done? Well, they grinded out some pretty good at-bats. They put the bat on the ball a little bit more. You would expect a lot of strikeouts. Mizrowski, I think, was just coming off, 15 strikeouts in a one-hit complete game against the Philadelphia Phillies, so he certainly knows how to go out there and shove, as the kids would say. And he was not bad at all on Friday night, don't get me wrong. But when the Braves had the opportunity to get him on the ropes and do something that very few other teams over the past couple of months have done, it was Atlanta that came through with the big hit. It was Mauricio Dubón, which should not surprise you at all. And we're going to talk about Mauricio Dubón a lot on the show. And I think we've been talking about him a lot this season, and maybe more than anybody thought we would. Because Mauricio Dubón just has a knack for coming through in those big spots. But to talk to Mauricio about it, as I did after that game, he'd say, that was my part. Sure, I did that, but you had to have this and this and this and this and this go right, and I just came through with my part of it. It's the ultimate teammate. I don't think that you can find, a more quintessential example of what a teammate should be than Mauricio Dubón. I was talking to Paul Bird of Braves Vision right after the game, and I don't get to see the field interviews because we're leaving, going from the press box down to the media room to talk to Walt Weiss and some of the players. And Paul Bird said, I don't think I've ever seen this before, but I was trying to interview Mauricio Dubón, and he was like, no, wait. Had to get Eli White in there. And why did he need Eli White to do the interview with him? Well, because Eli White made not one, but two outstanding defensive plays on that Friday night that came into to factor huge in the Braves' win. There was a running catch into the corner where Eli said, I was pretty much committed to running through a wall if that's what I had to do. And you love to hear that. Because, again, that's the kind of teammate, the kind of guy you want to go to war with. And Eli White made that catch. But it was the throw in the ninth inning to save that game, keep it a Braves lead, that had everybody talking, I think, by the end of the night. Because Eli White gunned down Jackson Chourio at the plate. I think that throw was clocked at, 95 miles an hour, right to home plate. Drake Baldwin holds onto the ball and gets that tag right into the back leg of the sliding runner who still had his front leg above the plate. Brewers challenged the blocking the plate rule. Didn't matter. What a beautiful play. When you write them up, that's how they look. And Eli White was in charge of those two plays. And for Mauricio Dubón, who had, the go-ahead hit off arguably the best pitcher in the game, he was ready to give credit to other guys. And that was pretty much what Friday night was all about, was kind of looking at the different parts of the team that showed up and played a part on that night. Because as we paint the picture and really look into that, and I know we're going to talk about other games other than Friday, but this felt like a moment for the Braves to really, again, remind themselves of who exactly they are and to win a game that, quite frankly, is the kind of game that you want to believe your team can win. When the other team's ace is out there and you're throwing your number 5 starter, number 4 starter, is he your number 3 starter? We don't know, but he's one of them, and he's Martin Perez, and he's been terrific this year. I mean, Martin Perez, you have to kind of ask yourself this question, and this is not one I expected to be asking back in February, is where would the Braves' rotation be without Martin Perez? Veteran lefty, signed a 1-year deal, was just looked upon as pitching depth, but you were hoping that you had ample opportunity to start a number of different guys that you had in your plans, and then if you needed to tap in on a Martin Perez or whoever it may be, sure, that's why you have the guy around there to do it. But Martin Perez got pushed right into action, and he has delivered time and time and time again, including going blow for blow with Jacob Mizrowski. 6 innings of 1-run ball for Perez, 6 innings of 2-run ball for the Miz. Game's not won in 6 innings, but that's a heck of a start for Martin Perez to deliver that. Then you had Mike Yastrzemski, who has had a challenging time at the plate this year, comes through as soon as Mizrowski's out of the game. Boom, home run into right field. That one ended up being pretty important in a 3-2 win. That was your insurance run. And it gave that little pad to Raisel Iglesias, who had to figure out a way to get the Brewers out in the ninth inning, but was able to do so. And all of that just seemed to just be a microcosm of what has made the Braves good this year. Dominic Smith was involved in that game, had a couple of hits as well. And it's those names and the rally that the Braves put together that Mauricio Dubón got the big hit. How did it all start? How about an infield hit by Jorge Mateo? Again, another guy that you looked at and thought, okay, there's a guy with some experience. We'll see maybe where he fits on the bench. Instead, he's out there making contributions on a much more regular basis because shortstop has been quite a question mark for the Braves at times this year and was destabilized even further by more injuries in the outfield and the very versatile Dubón being able to do a number of different things. Pretty much whatever you ask him to do, he can do. And you had to move Mauricio Dubón into the outfield, and it gives opportunity. And the opportunities that these guys have gotten, to make a long story short, and the way that they have risen to the occasion time and time and time again has made this just a much more complete Braves club than we have seen in years. And we're going to hear from Walt Weiss a little bit later in the show about this and kind of his thoughts on how exactly this team has come together and the ability that they have, pretty much 1 through 26. It's not just the bench. It's not just the starting lineup. It's also been what guys have done as they've stepped into the rotation, and what guys have done is they've gotten opportunity in the bullpen to continue to contribute to this club. And it does not mean that there won't be stretches like we saw with the Chicago series in particular. That was one that, hey, the Braves could have very easily left the South Side with no worse than a split and really could have won both of those games if they'd been able to score another couple of runs. That's really all it would have taken. So when I looked at the Chicago series, it was one of those, and what I'll call them, and I have called them this year, kind of annoying losses. You get walked off in the opener, tip your cap to a rookie outfielder that came up, made a huge play, hit the home run, gave the White Sox the win. Then you get Chris Sale out there the next day, and you're just not able to give him the run support. And that's been a bit of a troubling trend at times for the Braves here over the past 5 or 6 weeks. But, you were in those games. It was Friday when the wheels kind of started to come off, I think, officially. Yes, you lost Ronald Acuña Jr. in Game 1 against the White Sox with a strained left hamstring. We'll get into all of that in just a little bit. But Friday's injury, the Spencer Strider news, that was one that I think hit a lot harder because Spencer Strider's been going through this for a number of years, not that Ronald hasn't, but to find his way back to the player that he was before the injury has been quite a journey and quite an odyssey for Spencer Strider. And that journey and that odyssey does not appear to be over because his fastball had dropped down into the high 80s, and he had to leave that game early and go see surgeon Keith Meister, who had done his UCL brace a couple of years ago, and get some kind of prognosis on what's going on with Spencer Strider, physically speaking. What they found was elbow inflammation, nothing structural, but he's going to be shut down for a month. Then they're going to reassess that, and then if you just kind of start to do the math, you're into August, basically at that point, or late July, 4 to 6 weeks worth of building back up, potential rehab assignment, what have you, to maybe get Spencer Strider back at late August or early September, best case scenario. And then you kind of have to ask, well, what version are you going to get at that point? And I'll talk to Chad Bishop about this. He writes for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, covers the Braves there, does a great job. I'm looking forward to that chat as well about Spencer Strider and what that means for the Braves pitching depth and the things that they've been going through this year and what they were expecting to get that maybe they haven't gotten from certain arms. Strider, Spencer Schwellenbach, Hurston Waldrop, though I do think there's some good news there. A.J. Smith-Shawver, that's somebody that you could look at that could be coming in the second half. But what are the Braves going to do between now and the trade deadline? And even a bigger question, and Chad Bishop and I will talk about this, what are the Braves going to do at the trade deadline? I think that is a very good question, and one that may be more intriguing than perhaps any year in recent memory. Sunday was not the finish the Braves were looking for being honest. They were manhandled by the Brewers, a really bad second inning for Bryce Elder, and just like that, Milwaukee was able to get out of town by salvaging the finale, but it does not undo the good things that went on both Friday and Saturday as the Braves were able to beat Jacob Mizrowski and company on Friday, as we talked about, opening up the show, but also Saturday's win was the kind of victory that you certainly like to see, and it really underscored what has been, I think, one of the tenets of what's made the Braves so good this year, and it's that it can be a different guy, or guys, plural, every single day. That's the big contributor or the difference maker. And that typically is the hallmark of a winning club, which the Braves most certainly still are. But they needed a weekend like this. And Friday and Saturday, I would say categorically, are two of the best wins of the year for the Braves. And they could not have come at a better time. And there's something to be said for the timing of all of it. And Sunday was what it was. We all, I think, watched that. And if you didn't, then I hope you did something great with your Father's Day. And by the way, happy Father's Day to all out there. Happy Father's Day to my dad, Fred McAuley, who has certainly heard me talk a lot of baseball over the years, and I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing here, and his support and the support of my family has been a big part of that. So thank you, Dad. Appreciate that. And then if you did do something good on Sunday, and even being at the ballpark, even on a bad day, is a good day because you're at a ballpark. It's kind of the way I look at it. But long story short, as the Braves did lose on Sunday and Bryce Elder got roughed up, and we will talk about that a little bit more later, you can absorb those when you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing the vast majority of the times, which has kind of been the hallmark of the Braves this year, right? They've been winning series. And it went off the rails there for about a week and a half, and then kind of started to get back to where it needed to get. And this weekend was the kind of wins that the Braves were looking for. And I want to hear from Braves manager Walt Weiss talking about what it was like to go out there and do something that I think set the tone maybe for the weekend, and that was beating Jacob Misiorowski, who, again, is one of the toughest customers that you're going to find. But here's what Walt Weiss had to say on that big win to start the weekend on Friday night.
It looked like our team before about, a week or a week and a half ago. That's pretty much what we've looked like all year. And look, these things are going to happen. You're going to hit these skids every once in a while. But really proud of our guys because it's been a tough stretch, as we all know. And then you're facing Misiorowski, and we play a game like that and win the game. It's not easy to do, but it took everything to win that game. You mentioned Olson, just being down 0-2 to that guy and drawing a walk. I mean, that's really difficult to do. Great at bat by Olson. Like you said, Georgie using his legs to beat the ball out. So yeah, it took all those things to win that game. It's a good team. They're a tough team to put away. The ball's in play all the time. They don't chase. They got really good pitching. And that's always the common denominator with good teams. They pitch well.
Yeah, and the Brewers are certainly that, and I felt like they pitched pretty well throughout this entire series. They got walked off on Saturday after the Friday win, but a few of the guys that really contributed to that win on Friday, I mean, Matt Olson going down 0-2 against Jacob Misiorowski and working a walk to continue that inning and to set up the situation where eventually Mauricio Dubón came through with a 2-run single, but it all started with Jorge Mateo legging one out. And that hustle, and then going first to third right after that, kept Misiorowski on the ropes, and the whole thing just started to kind of click. But really, that was kind of inning you needed on that night, and the kind of win that you needed, because as Walt Weiss has also talked about, there's a rough stretch that the Braves have been going through coming into this series. They had lost 6 out of 7. You probably didn't feel great about what the pitching matchup was on Friday night, but the Braves found a way to win, and that kind of took the edge off of what had been a very frustrating week and a half.
We've been in a tough stretch, and it's been a lot of things, right? I mean, we've talked about, make excuses, so we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but it's just been the whole thing, the travel, the rain delays, the early morning arrivals. It's kind of hit us all at once. We weren't playing well, and then you're up against that arm that we had to face tonight after going through this tough stretch, and we come out and play like that. It's one of those things that can really catapult you. So we'll see, but just really proud of our guys and the way that they handled this tonight, and they've handled the last 7 to 10 days.
That 7 to 10 days, just if you needed the Reader's Digest version of it, was losing series to the White Sox and to the Mets and then to the Giants, and then there were multiple rain delays going on. The Braves had awful travel going from Chicago to New York, and then even trying to get home before the off day on Monday, before they began this homestand against the San Francisco Giants on Tuesday. The Braves had an issue where at one point they were at least thinking about, hey, we may run out of fuel. We may need to figure out somewhere else to land, at least for a little while, refuel, and try to get back into Atlanta. So you couldn't even get home to kind of enjoy that off day. And then when the Braves did get back to business against San Francisco, well, the rain wouldn't go away. And that was a very frustrating Tuesday night. No questions asked. I mean, everybody, I think, kind of understands that was one that you'd like to have to do over again as far as starting that game. But then it led to not one but 2 losses on Wednesday, another rain out on Thursday. And again, Jacob Misiorowski is just human. He puts on his pants one leg at a time like we all do. But that's probably not the pitcher you wanted to see after going through all of that. Plus, having lost Spencer Strider, having lost Ronald Acuña Jr., just things were not trending in the way that the Braves wanted it to. But how you respond to those challenges, to Walt Weiss's point, that's another hallmark of a good club. This was kind of a gut check weekend for the Braves. And the answer, I think, is what it should be and needed to be. And that was win a series against a very good baseball team, which the Milwaukee Brewers are, as they reminded you on Sunday. But one of the things that has been, if you talk about hallmarks of what the Braves are capable of doing this year, it is having different guys at different times coming through. And the reason for that is because of what the Braves have done in reserve. And Walt Weiss said this may be the best bench that the Braves have had in a very, very long time.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's any question about that. In my 9 years here, we've always had the everyday players that posted and played well, but typically, and nothing against the guys that have been here, but there's been a big drop-off when you go to the bench. And just the opposite, there's been times where our bench has carried us this year. You know, the guys that we're talking about, they've carried us. And so that's what it takes to have a good year, to go deep in the playoffs. You got to be able to use your entire roster. Everyone's got to chip in. It's the same thing in the bullpen. Guys are doing their thing out there. So I think our strength is in the sum of our parts, right? And when you put it all together, it's a good group.
Yeah, it takes a village, I think was the phrase I used a little bit earlier, and I do think it's been true of the Braves this year. I mean, yes, they've got some star players, and fast forward to what you were looking at on Saturday, the Braves were going to turn to Chris Sale to try to get them back in the win column, and the Braves offense was not really able to do a whole lot, save an Ozzie Albies home run early, but that plus an Ozzie Albies home run real late, and walking off the Brewers gave the Braves yet another win, so back-to-back days, and Ozzie Albies is one of those guys that when you start to look at what the Braves have done so well over the past 8-9 years, save basically 2025, it's been largely because of the core that they've put together. And Ozzie Albies is a huge part of that and has been a huge part of that. And you were kind of wondering coming into this year, can Ozzie bounce back? Can Ozzie get himself kind of back on track? I felt like he looked better the last couple of months of last year, but the first 3 to 4 months was a big struggle for him. And I think part of that was the wrist surgery that he was coming off of. And he'd also been through other broken bones. It seems like every year Ozzie's had to go through something like that where he's missed an extended period of time. But now he's showing you this year. He's also going to be involved in some of these big moments. It pretty much started on opening day and has run its way all the way forward. But the guys we were talking about on Friday night, and we've been talking about all year long, whether that's Dominic Smith with a walk-off grand slam on the opening weekend, and whether that's what we've seen from Mauricio Dubón time after time after time this year, and right on down to Jorge Mateo and many others that have come in and just played a role for the Braves this year, it has helped make this a more complete club. The Braves of years past, when they've been at their best, it was pretty much, we're going to hit some home runs, we're going to outslug you, we're going to outscore you, we're going to pitch pretty well for the most part. That seems to be something the Braves did more years than not. And that was how they looked at, I think, putting together a club, was having those guys that pose for a full 162. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you've got some guys that you can move around, have some versatility, you can slide some guys through the DH spot and get them off their feet a little bit, this has just been a very good version as well. It's somebody different every single day is basically what it boils down to. And one of those pieces that's been here for quite a while is Eli White. I believe this is year number 3 for Eli as a part of the Atlanta Braves. And he's kind of been a little bit of everywhere. And whenever the Braves have needed him to kind of step in and steal a base, he's capable of doing that. He plays a very good outfield. He showed you that on Friday night by making a great catch, by throwing out a runner at the plate. And he also, as he showed last weekend against the New York Mets, is capable of running into one every now and again. So Walt Weiss talked a little bit about Eli White and the value that he's provided to the Braves this year and in his time with this club over the past few seasons.
Eli kind of just quietly does these things. He's never really had consistent playing time where he's out there every day for a couple months. It's intermittent, but he finds a way to do what he did tonight. Or like you said, on the bases, changing the game there, or getting a big hit, or he's got that sneaky power all of a sudden hitting the ball in the seats. So he's a nice piece to have.
He definitely has been a nice piece to have, and having all of these different pieces just reminds me a lot about what kind of made the Braves good as they started to win a little bit more consistently again at the end of the 2000s. Like this streak of 14 straight division titles ended in 2006. And then the Braves kind of had to figure it out for a minute. But by the time they started to get good again, late in Bobby Cox's tenure here, and then even I think through the early part of the Freddie Gonzalez tenure, you had different versatile players that could step in. Martin Prado obviously was, I think, kind of the leader in the clubhouse, both literally and figuratively as far as that's concerned. But you had Omar Infante. You had a guy like Eric Hinsky. You went out and got veteran players that could just kind of step in and do some things for you, whether that was a Derek Lee or a Troy Gloss. I mean, there's a long list of players that the Braves have turned to and gotten something good out of when maybe other teams just looked and said, yeah, I think his best days are probably past, and we're going to pass on that guy's services. And the Braves, at least this year, have kind of turned back the clock in a very good way and found some value in different spots. And the last one I want to talk about is Jorge Mateo. And we'll get into a little bit more of a Jorge Mateo discussion as the show goes on, because we have to have a Ha-Seong Kim discussion, which has been a very unfun one. We're going to table that for the moment. But Walt Weiss talked about Jorge Mateo and has really talked about him in glowing terms as somebody he just has seen and thought, if we're going to add some depth, have you thought about this guy? I think I had some conversations with Alex Anthopoulos and company over the offseason, and the Braves went out and got Jorge Mateo, and all he has done is come in and flash some considerable skills, including his elite speed, which was a huge reason why the Braves were able to win that game on Friday. So here's Walt Weiss talking about the value that Jorge Mateo has provided in his first 3 months in a Braves uniform.
Had to make some tricky plays and some tough moments with the game on the line. And for me, that's how you judge shortstops. With the game on the line, do they make the tough play? Can they finish? And Georgie finished a couple tough plays. Look, he's a talented player, man. Everyone's known that for a long time. I do think that there's a level of comfort for him here. He's been embraced here. And I think it helps his performance. Loving it here. I think it has something to do with it, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you get to a place where just some things start to click, confidence is a huge boost for these players as well. And getting some regular bats can help you out. And Jorge Mateo has kind of had to, I think, fight for those, but he's made an awfully compelling case at times this year to get some more playing time. And we'll get into that as we discuss a little bit more about what shortstop is for the Atlanta Braves currently, what it maybe needs to be, what it could be as the season wears on. And obviously there's a trade deadline out in front of us, so is that a spot where the Braves might look to see just at least who is available out there? Which kind of levers can you pull if you're Alex Anthopoulos to make this club better? But I think the biggest discussion when it comes to the trade deadline is going to be how you can impact your starting rotation. Sunday was just a reminder, I think, that for all that Bryce Elder has done this year, I don't think that you're looking at him to be your number 2 starter come the postseason. And with all respect to what Martin Perez has done for the Braves this year, I don't necessarily think you were looking at him in those terms as well. These have been nice surprises for the Braves. These can be contributors and reasons why you get to the postseason, but once you do get there, you want to have the kind of weapons that allow you to go head-to-head on a regular basis with what will assuredly be the best teams in baseball that are left standing come October. And it'll be interesting to see how exactly Alex Anthopoulos goes about this because, yes, there are some pieces that we have not seen yet that could be back from injury, but can you roll the dice and risk not pushing some chips in to get somebody that could help out your rotation in a big-time way? And the conversation continues to swirl around a particular name, a 2-time American League Cy Young Award winner who could be on the block, but we don't know yet, in Tarek Skubal. But hey, I know we're sitting here on, the 21st of June, just having a little chat about what might be available, but every single week, that chatter is going to get louder and louder and louder. And believe me, there are a lot of people out there right now, I'm one of them, that's very intrigued to see how exactly the Braves are going to supplement their starting rotation because I think that there's pretty much a universal agreement that they need to do something based on what they've had to already overcome this year, the sustainability of it moving forward, and then how do you want to set yourself up for ultimate success when the games matter most, and that, of course, is in October. So can you find that guy or those guys at the trade deadline, not just starters, but guys who could help your team, guys that could put them over the top, the pieces that could make it complete when it comes to being a World Series contender? The Braves are already a World Series hopeful, and I would argue they are a contender for that again. Their record would certainly make that case. Their record against 500 or better teams would make that case. And even this weekend, I think after about a week and a half of wondering what in the world was going wrong or how many things could go wrong at once for the Braves, that they still have that capability of being a good and a more complete baseball team than the one we saw against the White Sox, the Mets, and the Giants before that. But pitching is at the root of all of this, right? And pitching has been obviously something that the Braves have hung their hat on for a very, very, very long time. But one of the big things that you have to deal with every single year, and the Braves and 29 other clubs have to do this math, is what happens when injury rears its ugly head, who's it going to be, and how long is it going to take? And unfortunately, we've had to have that conversation a lot about Spencer Strider. Strider was slowed out of spring training by an oblique pull and then was able to come back, make 8 starts at the big league level, and I would say to mixed results. There were flashes at times of the old Spencer Strider, particularly the start against the L.A. Dodgers, where the Braves went out to L.A. and won a series, which is not something that necessarily has been happening on an annual basis. And fans of the team for a long time certainly know how bad things can go when they roll into Dodger Stadium. But Spencer Strider went out there and looked, I think, his best that he has looked since the UCL brace surgery that he had back in 2024. But the subsequent outings, and then, of course, what we saw in New York last Friday was very troubling. And troubling to the point that Strider's now on the 60-day injured list with elbow inflammation. And this is something the Braves are going to have to manage, and something that, unfortunately, given how things looked on Friday with a fastball dropping down into the high 80s, when Walt Weiss was asked about this, he discussed the disappointment of this IL stint, but also the fact that, hey, this was something we expected given how events played out.
I knew it'd be a shutdown. When a guy walks off the field, typically it's not going to be great. There's going to be an absence there, so not surprising. But, hoping, another 4 weeks he gets shut down here and he's feeling better and get back to work.
So that shutdown is going to be for 4 weeks from throwing. And Strider, who got an MRI with Dr. Keith Meister, who performed that UCL brace surgery in April of 2024, will then give him another MRI. And if the inflammation that they found has gone down, then I think they could clear Spencer Strider to resume doing baseball activities and start a throwing progression of some sort in hopes of being back before this year is over. Now, I don't need to tell you if you were watching, but I will anyway because it's a show, and if I don't talk, there's not much of a show, that on Friday, when that fastball was, 88-ish miles an hour, it was not a great feeling. Just wondering, based on his injury history, what could be going wrong for Spencer Strider. And hearing elbow again after he underwent Tommy John surgery in college at Clemson in 2019, and then had to get the UCL brace, so basically have that elbow reinforced in 2024. Every time you hear that, or every time you have any kind of elbow involvement, you wonder exactly how bad it could go. And unfortunately for Spencer Strider, it's going to be a lengthy absence. But on the flip side of that coin, I guess, it could be worse, which I understand are famous last words a lot of times. But for what I expected and what I heard, this was probably about as good a case scenario as you could ask for if you're Spencer Strider and the Braves. But here's Walt Weiss talking a little bit more about what Spencer's had to go through, because I asked him, as you watch somebody who's as competitive and as dialed in as Spencer Strider is, how difficult is it to see him suffer yet another setback? And here's what the Braves manager had to say.
I always feel for the player first. Been in most of their shoes, and so you know what that feels like when you can't compete. And so that's always where my thoughts go initially. It's always tough watching a guy walk off the field, especially a pitcher. And he's been through it, the last few years. The thing is, he does everything he can to prepare himself and prepare his body for a major league season. He's maniacal in the weight room and what he does to prepare. So it can get frustrating as a player when you're doing what you feel is everything you can do, and this stuff still happens. It's the nature of competition at this level. Those things are almost inevitable at some point, but it's tough when you've had to deal with it a couple, 3 years in a row, for sure.
And that's the unfortunate thing about injury is as much preparation as you do, as hard as you work out, as well as you can condition your body, as much as you can stretch before the game, these things can still happen. And it's not indicative of something that's just not being done right by the player or not being done right by the training staff. They're just injuries that just take place. It's just the nature of the beast. You can do all the things you want to beforehand, and then you get out there in the heat of competition, and your body's going to feel different things at different times. And it's just unfortunate for Spencer Strider, who I do think is one of the better competitors and one of the more, I think, mentally strong individuals. So with great power comes great responsibility, I think, is the way that phrase goes. And unfortunately for Spencer, his resolve is going to be tested yet again here. But hopefully, again, by being shut down for 4 weeks, the Braves are able to get him back into a throwing progression, and he has an opportunity to pitch again this year. But the question becomes, what version of Spencer Strider are you going to get? And then I think maybe question B is, would it be in his best interest to maybe pitch in relief as opposed to trying to come back and pitch bulk innings every fifth day? Now, coming into the year, I didn't really think that's anything that was going to benefit him, and it felt like just based on last year and everything that he had done, that maybe Spencer Strider was going to finally just have that opportunity to have a normal, healthy winter, a normal spring training, and come in and just every fifth day, things would start to work themselves out for him again. And even if he wasn't throwing 101 miles an hour, you can still do a lot at 96, 97. Like, that is still successful in the big leagues in the year 2026. But as you looked at Spencer Strider's arsenal, his fastball was not living as much in the mid to high 90s as it was around 93, 94. And the movement of that fastball, which had been something Spencer had really pointed to, was not always where he needed it to be. That extension that pitchers like to get. Something that makes Jacob Misiorowski so ridiculously good is the amount of extension. So not only does he throw hard, but by the time he lets the ball go, it just feels like he's already right on top of you. And Spencer Strider was that guy in 2022 and 2023. But can he pitch at a different level than that and have success in the major leagues? And I think that he can. But some of his secondaries, especially his slider, were also getting hit hard. And opponents were slugging over 600 on his fastball and over 600 on his slider. And those are the two pitches that make Spencer Strider. You can mix in a curveball and mix in a changeup, but if those first two offerings are not getting you the kind of outs and the kind of swing and miss that they need to, which they weren't, because the chase rate was way down, you're going to have to figure something out. And Spencer Strider, I think, was trying to figure those things out, but unfortunately his arm is just going through it again. And the Braves are going to have to figure out in the meantime, what are they going to do with no Spencer Strider? Well, it looks like the short-term plan, at least, is to lean on J.R. Ritchie, a talented rookie who has also shown flashes of what he's capable of. Grant Holmes is still in rotation, and I think he's going to remain there now with the Strider news, even if you were kind of thinking about maybe the possibility that Grant Holmes could give you something in relief, and maybe later on he will, if you go out and get somebody else or somebody comes in that can replace him in rotation, because I think Grant Holmes, first time through the order, is pretty dominant. So that might speak well for what he could do for you in the bullpen. But your rotation right now is fronted by Chris Sale, Martin Perez, and Bryce Elder. And they've made this thing work for much of the year, but I think it underscores just how much injuries have impacted this rotation. They only got 8 starts from Spencer Strider, have yet to get one from Spencer Schwellenbach, and we don't know how that's going to play out yet this year. Hurston Waldrop, we'll talk about him in a little while, is looking good in the minors in his last couple of outings and could be a factor in the next few weeks. And A.J. Smith-Shawver at some point, if he's ready to go on a rehab assignment, that would be a nice arm to be able to trot out there as well. But none of those guys are going to be able to help you right now in the immediate future. So I saw something on Sunday that I did think was interesting and we're talking about, and that's Reynaldo Lopez. Could he get another shot in rotation, which a couple of weeks ago, I would have said I don't think that that's really in the cards for him. But it felt like a couple of 3 weeks ago, we still saw Reynaldo kind of topping out around 94, maybe the occasional 95. Well, I was watching him 50 pitches into his appearance on Sunday at Truist Park, pumping 96, 97 there in his final inning of work. And if you got that Reynaldo Lopez that can get it up there 97 miles an hour again and get some of his secondaries working, that could be intriguing. Is it a finished product? No, I don't think that it is. I think Reynaldo is still looking to put some things together as he comes back from that shoulder issue a year ago. And it would appear as we're in the middle to late June part of the season, that it's taken some time to get that velocity back for him. But maybe that's somebody to give a chance to again at some point. You'll have to keep stretching him out. I don't think they want to do that with Didier Fuentes. I get more and more of the impression based on the usage that they see him as somebody who could moonlight, at least for a little while, as a leverage reliever. Even if you see him as a starter in the future, that's a talented arm. And bullpens that have as many talented arms as you can, including that one of Didier Fuentes, can be built to win in October as well. So you can't rule that out. But as recently as a couple of weeks ago, I did not see Reynaldo Lopez really being somebody who was going to be a lift for this rotation if he were to get another opportunity. But I'll tell you somebody who has been all year long, and that is Martin Perez. He was terrific again on Friday as the Braves beat Jacob Mizrachi and the Brewers. And you do have to ask, where in the world would this rotation be without Perez, who has pitched to a sub-3 ERA after throwing, I believe, all of about 40 innings a year ago, and kind of coming in as a relative non-factor, just some veteran depth in spring training, and even getting designated for assignment in the first few weeks of the season, and now coming back and every fifth day having the opportunity to help you out in the rotation. Walt Weiss talked a little bit about Martin Perez and the fact that he has flat out been one of the Braves' best pitchers in 2026.
It's been one of our best starters. He's one of our many, I guess you could say, unsung heroes, the guys that maybe when we were in spring training, we weren't looking at some of these guys as being the impact players that they've been. Martin's one of them. Now he's had a really good career. You know, he was hurt last year and I think through 45 innings or so. So you don't know what to expect, but he's been unbelievable. Great leader in the clubhouse, a great example, just a tremendous competitor. And the guy can pitch, man. I mean, it's not all about lighting up the radar gun, as he shows. I mean, if you can command the ball and you can make the ball move late, you can be successful.
And Martin Perez has been very successful this year. He's 6-3 with a 2.78 ERA. He's made 11 starts for the Braves. He's also pitched some multi-inning relief options, but basically he's come out of nowhere to help stabilize the Braves rotation at the time in which somebody had to stabilize the Braves rotation, and that someone really has been Martin Perez. 11 starts for the Braves this year, only 10 starts all of last season for the Chicago White Sox, where he pitched well, but it was 56 innings and then had to deal with some more injuries. So for him, he was just looking for an opportunity, trying to get back on track. He was an all-star a couple of years ago, or a few years ago now, with the Texas Rangers when they won the World Series. Just a nice player, a veteran player. And I think that as much as the Braves have appreciated what he's done on the mound, the compliments that he gets for who he is behind the scenes, as you just heard from Walt Weiss, that's a big factor for things that are making this club as good as it is. So let's hear a little bit from Martin Perez after out-dueling Jacob Misiorowski about kind of how he views his normal day at the office.
As I've been saying from the beginning of the season, is I just come here to do my job. I don't control the decisions, and I'm healthy. So, any decision that they make, I just got to be available to go out there and do my job. I know I've been a lot of things around me, but I think mentally I'm strong, and I'm just here to help the team.
He has done the job, and he has helped the team. So I'd say mission accomplished for Martin Perez thus far. And you certainly will take all the contributions you can get from Perez. You'll take all the contributions you can get from all of the guys. I mean, not named Chris Sale, because you need from Chris Sale this expectation as well as the contributions that you want to get from him. But everything behind Chris Sale has been kind of a work in progress for the Braves in rotation. And as good as Bryce Elder looked for the first, 11, 12 starts of the year, he's been going through it here in the month of June. 2 of his 4 starts, especially the last 2, and it is the last 2, I can tell you in particular, have really kind of changed, I think, a little bit of the outlook as far as Bryce is concerned. Ran into a really bad second inning on Sunday, gave up 8 runs to the Brewers, most runs allowed by a Braves starter since, I believe, 2017. If I heard Brandon Gaudin and CJ Nitkowski right on the Braves broadcast, that's probably not what you're looking to do. Worst this or that for the first time in 10 years. But, I mean, overall, I think there's still more that you can ask from Elder if you're looking at him more so as your 4th or 5th starter. If you're looking at him as your number 2 starter, I think, and you're a playoff contender the way the Braves are, there's still significant questions about maybe what's out there and what you can do to affect a change and to add some talent into that rotation. It's not to take away from what he's done, but I do think you have to go into it with the mindset of this is a prove-it sport, and you got to go out there and prove it every 5th day. And when it comes to pitching the big innings in October, it would be nice to have some guys that have proven that they can do it before to add into this mix. Welcome back in to From the Diamond with Grant McAuley right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, live from the Kia Studios on a Sunday as we close out the weekend. Braves and Brewers are done. A road trip is ahead for the Braves who head out west. First stop, the San Diego Padres. Well, it's been a very interesting run for the Braves here lately. One of the best teams in baseball all year long, but finally ran into what I would say was at least a bit of a speed bump on the schedule. Here to help me talk about that and perhaps reasons to maybe not worry so much about the Braves based on what we've seen this weekend is Chad Bishop, who of course covers the Atlanta Braves for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You can follow him on social media at Mr. Chad Bishop. Chad, appreciate the time. It's a long time no see, but for this Braves team we've been watching this year, way more ups than downs, but I guess some reasons to be concerned lately would be probably the way to put it.
Yeah, I think so. Every team is going to go through one of these stretches, and I think it seems all that more glaring because of how good the Braves have been, right? Like, everybody has gone through these stretches, and the Braves have not. So when they finally hit that snag, it's been tough to reason or tough to figure. But again, it's baseball. It's 162. Every team goes through it, and the Braves are dealing with some injuries. They've had some flight delays and bad weather and rain delays, and not making excuses for the club, but some of that factors into it. And it looks like they've gotten over it. I think that's one thing about this team, right, is they seem to bounce back, and whatever the struggles may be, they don't seem to last for too long.
Yeah, I'd call this club resilient, and I think Walt Weiss has done a pretty good job of managing expectations around the club because, we talk to him on a regular basis, and while it's easy to talk about all the things that go right, I think that Walt's done a pretty good job of saying, look, we're happy about that, but we understand how challenging a baseball season can be. Injuries, wins, losses, all of those things can fluctuate and can hit clubs at different times and in waves, as the case may be for the Braves with this injury thing. But it's been quite a challenging couple of weeks, but I do think some light at the end of the tunnel here as far as what's happened at Truist Park this weekend, winning that series over the Milwaukee Brewers because they dropped 6 out of 7. The White Sox, a much improved team. The Mets struggling. The Giants, I don't know if there was a dry inning of baseball it felt like played in that entire series, but to come off the deck and beat the Brewers Friday and Saturday, those, I think, Chad, maybe 2 of the best wins of the entire season for this team, and they couldn't have come at a better time.
Well, Ozzie Albies used the word, special, right? Like, this seems like a special group, and I think that's part of the reason is maybe a younger, more inexperienced team, maybe a team that hasn't dealt with success, maybe losing 6-7, things go in a tailspin, things go the other direction. But with this clubhouse, with guys like Ozzie, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, and then the newcomers of Mauricio Dubón, Martin Perez, Dominic Smith, throw Kyle Farmer in there, even adding Joey Bart this week. I mean, sort of the veteran presence of saying, all right, like that's a bad stretch, but we're not going to let it derail our season. But, you come home, you face one of the best teams in baseball in the Brewers, and certainly one of the best pitchers in baseball in Jacob Mizorowski. I mean, that thing sort of could have went sideways, right? But shows the resiliency of this team, sort of the strength of this clubhouse to not panic one way or the other and come out and play really good baseball and take the series from this really, really good Brewers team. They've done it all year. They bounce back, haven't had a losing streak of more than 3 games. When they have a clunker, as Walt Weiss loves to call them, they bounce back the next day and usually seem to win 2 or 3 in a row. Again, that's what made this team, like Ozzie said, special, and maybe they are. Maybe this team is showing time and time again that they're really putting something really, really special together this summer.
Well, chatting with Chad Bishop of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He joins me here on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. I do want to get into some of the injury stories because you did bring up a couple of names that we definitely have to talk about, and injuries have plagued this team again in 2026. Michael Harris II appears to be good to go after his second time dealing with the back discomfort. Same cannot be said for Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuña Jr. to varying degrees. Both men landed on the IL as the Braves had that not fun, very bad road trip in Chicago and New York. We'll get to Acuña in a moment, but I'm curious, Chad, about your reaction to the Strider news, because when I saw his fastball drop into the 80s and he was slated to go see a surgeon, and I just wasn't filled with warm and fuzzy feelings about his outlook for 2026. And even though the prognosis is better than many, including myself, may have feared, there's still significant question about Strider's availability and what version of Spencer Strider we see if he can get back and pitch again this year, right?
I think that's what folks have to remember. I mean, even if we play the timeline out and best case scenario, Spencer Strider can pitch for this ball club in mid-August, what sort of Spencer Strider are you going to get? Is he starting ball games for you? Is he in high leverage relief situations? Is it going to take a few more weeks to build back up even after that? I don't know. And where will the Braves rotation be at that point? Are they going to be desperate for him to come back, or are they going to make a trade to fill in that spot? Are they going to have enough arms coming back from other rehab assignments where, not to say Spencer Strider is not needed, right? But maybe he's not at the top of the list of necessities for this team. It's tough, man. I mean, you and I get to know these guys and get to watch them work, and we've seen what Spencer's gone through, and really has had some really bright spots this season, kind of reinventing himself or recalibrating himself as a pitcher. And to have this setback is really brutal for his career. So it's tough, man. Again, even if he is able to strengthen himself and make his way back up, and his elbow feels okay by the end of this year, I don't know, where the Braves put him in. Is it risky to throw him in there in a pennant race or a playoff series after taking all this time off in the middle of the summer? I don't know. Pitchers have done it before, but it certainly seems like it could be a risk, not only for the Braves team, but really for Spencer from a confidence standpoint or a health standpoint. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, and we just got to hope that he gets better and can pitch at a very high level pretty soon, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it would certainly be nice, and it would have solved a lot of problems for the Braves this year. But as we know with these pitching injuries, I mean, it was pretty much day one. You got Spencer Schwellenbach and Hurston Waldrop, I think on back-to-back days, the first week or so of spring training. As soon as they started throwing, they had to be shut down. You try to weather that storm. You get to the end of spring training, and then Spencer Strider has the oblique issue, which sets him back again. And it has been a tough couple of years for Spencer Strider. And I don't know if I worry about him on the confidence level quite as much, because he is a very confident and very competitive individual who I think mentally, and it may be easy to say from the outside, he would appear to have a lot of the tools to deal with what's being thrown at him. But at some point, it does become, I'm sure, mentally as well as physically exhausting to go through all of this and try to get back to some level, some semblance of the pitcher you were before. Because as much as we like to talk about it, I'm sure Spencer Strider's really well aware that he can't rear back and throw 101 miles an hour and snap off the nastiest slider that we've seen in recent years by a Braves pitcher. He just hasn't had that in his bag here lately, and he hasn't been able to get out there and find that consistency. But long story short, I do look at Strider as somebody that it almost feels like that would be a plus if you can get him back. But you certainly can't look at it and plan around it as your option A, your plan A scenario. At this point, I do feel like the Braves, and this is not breaking news, they are approaching a trade deadline that feels quite pivotal in a lot of ways, and maybe more so than any other Braves team in recent years. And I do want to get back to that in a moment, but before we do jump into trades and pitching and depth and maybe even what the effect is on Spencer Strider and some other arms, Ronald Acuña Jr. is out of the lineup right now. Strained left hamstring. It's the second time this has happened. It occurred when the club was playing the Chicago White Sox about a week and a half ago. Just like the first time, it happened when Acuña was running to first base, and it sounds like the Braves want to be cautious here, but just how much time do you think they're going to give Ronald if he starts feeling like he is ready to play again?
I think probably more time than previously, right? And I say that because this, like Walt Weiss mentioned, this is the exact same hamstring, sort of the same spot that was injured before, and not that he came back too soon previously. I mean, he was ready to go this first time this hamstring injury popped up, and you saw that with his performance at the plate. But, given where the Braves are, in the standings with guys contributing like Eli White, Mike Yastrzemski, and Mauricio Dubón able to play the outfield, there's just not a lot of reason to rush Ronald Acuña back as much as the Braves want him back, as much as Ronnie wants to be back in there. It's a long summer, and sort of, contrarian to the Spencer Strider conversation, you can save a guy like Ronald Acuña till August and September and expect him to play at a high level. And maybe you do that, right? Like maybe you give him a extended break into July, right? Maybe, I don't know if we're waiting until after the All-Star break. That seems like a ways away. But again, there's so much season left, and there's so many games for Ronald Acuña to play. You're not in the heart of a race right now in the middle of June. You can take a little bit of time and make sure you're doubly safe. Give him maybe one more week than he needs, right? I mean, this guy needs to be in your lineup. He needs to be in your outfield. Such a pivotal part of this team. Again, there's not any reason really at all to rush him back at this point. Make sure that thing is more than 100%. What do you say in spring training? He felt 200%, and everybody made fun of him. Make sure he's at the top of his game, and there's just no concern over this thing. Get him back healthy.
Yeah, I just did some math when he went down in Chicago, and I had some different conversations with people doing call-ins and different interviews and just talking baseball, as we like to do. But it was this, he should come back after the All-Star break. And just looking at it right there at face value, that's 28 games to be missed for a grade 1 hamstring strain. Now, if it was something more severe, I could see 28 games as an easy possibility there, considering he missed, about 2 weeks worth of games the last time that he was out. But to your point, he then came back and looked like the Ronald Acuña Jr. that seemed to be 200% at the way he was playing. So there is, I guess, those waves and those ebbs and flows, as Walt likes to say, about this offense. And I tend to think that the best version of the Braves has Ronald Acuña Jr. at the top of the order. It would just be hard for me to look at a healthy Ronald and say, we're just going to keep you out for a full month if you feel like you can be back and there's just nothing left for you to do, nothing left for you to prove other than to sit around. I don't think that's really the object here, but they are in kind of a weird place with him because you'd like to say extra time will stop this from happening again, but I'm just going to play contrarian and say, look, there's no way to predict when and if this kind of thing or something different could happen to any player this year.
No doubt. I look at it as all right, we talk here the June 20th, 21st. All right, let's circle July 1st. Well, then let's take it maybe a couple days after that, right? Like maybe after that July 4th weekend. Just throwing numbers out there, but the point is, if and when Ronald is ready to come back, maybe it's not that day. Maybe it's a couple days later. Maybe it's, activating him and putting him in the DH spot. Not that he can't pull a hamstring from the DH position, right? But you're exactly right. I mean, this is not a scenario where you can predict when it's going to happen. If it's going to happen, he could play out the rest of the season and play every single game and never hit the injured list again, never have a day off, or he could be back a week and this thing happens again. But again, I just think the smart money here is that the Braves slow playing this one a little bit more and making sure he is more than 100% ready to go to help this team down the stretch.
Yeah, I would co-sign with that, and I do think that's what they're going to do. It's just how long is long enough? How long is too long? I guess those are questions they'll have to answer as this thing develops. Let's wrap up with this, chatting with Chad Bishop of the AJC. He covers the Atlanta Braves for them. He joins me here on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It is still a ways away, but we may as well start having the discussion about the trade deadline. And Bob Nightingale of USA Today stoked the flames again for the Tarek Skubal sweepstakes is what I'm going to call it. And he named the Braves a dark horse to land the two-time Cy Young Award winner. Look, to me, the math makes sense. The Braves have the Jerks and Profar money to spend. At least that's my understanding. And the prospect price is going to be a big question, but this is the best farm system the Braves have had in years and years and years. But if they find a way to do this, it does feel like to me that this is a year where that kind of impact move makes the most sense for this Braves team, or at least more sense than it has in recent years. So I'll ask you, what do you think about all of that? I think starting pitcher is certainly on their wish list, but is Skubal kind of pie in the sky, or is this something to be maybe, wishing and dreaming on if you're a Braves fan looking to see who could be walking through that door before the trade deadline on August the 3rd?
I would imagine that the conversations are around the corner. I don't know if they've started yet. Talking with some folks around the Braves last week, the thinking was like it's just so early in this trade deadline rumor mill. There's so many teams left in it when you consider an expanded playoffs era that we're in now. I mean, how many teams out there are sellers? Probably less than 5, right? I mean, You're a 10-game winning streak away from being right back in the mix. You're a 10-game losing streak away from thinking, well, maybe this isn't the year. So if you look at the Tigers and you're thinking, well, they're going to get rid of Scoop, maybe they're not. Maybe they get hot and they get in a playoff race, and all of a sudden, they want to keep the race. Maybe he's not for sale, right? We just saw the Giants and all the guys that they are allegedly selling, which teams are going to be buying, who's willing to get rid of their prospects. I think Tarek Skubal definitely is going to be the hottest name, and everyone is sort of gunning for. But I would look at some of the other teams that have big time starting pitchers that maybe are buried in the standings, and maybe the asking price isn't too high. Which prospects do the Braves think there's no way in the world they're getting rid of guy A or guy B? But it's just so early in this season to start thinking about who may be available, who may not be available, which prospects the Braves are willing to part with. Tarek Skubal, again, is just so popular and just such, the name everybody is going to be going after. Same thing with Byron Buxton, right? Like everybody thinks he's going to be traded. Oh, the Braves should go get him. And he said, I love being a Twin. I don't want to go anywhere. So there's all these conversations to be had, all these rumors. That's what makes it fun for us. But it just, the end of June here, I just think it's too early to know who's going to be around, who's going to be available. In the long run, though, I do think I definitely agree with you. Starting pitching is going to be a premium. If the Braves want to make a playoff run, especially given their injury past, especially who is in the rotation now, adding to that group to get a prime time game 1, game 2 of a playoff series type starter, that would be huge for this team and would lift them so much higher into this race for a world championship.
Yeah, it certainly would. We're not breaking news here when we say the Braves are going to prioritize starting pitching. It may be the most obvious statement we make, but who exactly could they get, and how high are they shooting with this? It could be more fascinating this year than I think it has been at any time in recent years, because the need is certainly there, and you have to look at what's this club capable of doing, and does it have the opportunity to do some special things? Well, they seem to believe so. So some reinforcements would certainly be something that you'd love to see for this team to finally feel like it plays at a level in which maybe they're able to get the whole band together, because it hasn't really felt like that's been the case here in 2026, and they're sitting on one of the best records in the game. So a lot of baseball to be talked about still, but it was fun to talk about some of the storylines for the Braves and everything that we're watching on a regular basis. Chad, let everybody know where they can find your work and how they can follow along with everything you're doing covering the Braves.
Yeah, no doubt. At Mr. Chad Bishop on the socials and ajc.com/Atlanta Braves. We got you covered all summer long.
All right. Well, Chad, I look forward to seeing you out at the ballpark very soon. And, we'll do this again sometime, I'm sure.
All right, my friend. Thanks.
And as you just heard my discussion with Chad Bishop, we talked about the trade deadline and what the trade deadline could look like for the Atlanta Braves and what areas they would want to focus on, and none is bigger than starting pitching. That's just, let's not bury the lead. That's the spot for the Braves right there. But if there are some other areas where the Braves can add to their offense, add to their lineup, and upgrade somewhere, then yeah, I think that Alex Anthopoulos could get creative about it. But let's talk about the good right now. The good is Mauricio Dubón. Mauricio Dubón came over from the Houston Astros in a trade in which I think a lot of folks looked at as, wait, really? And then other folks looked at with a lot of skepticism, saying, look, if this guy is getting regular bats at shortstop, we've done it wrong. And I can report to you that the second group is not quite as correct as the first group, which was like, wait, really? We got Mauricio Dubón for Nick Allen? That's a pretty good trade, and it has been a pretty good trade. That I can tell you. He leads the Braves with runners in scoring position, knocking in 37 runs this year. It's not particularly close either. This guy, when you've got runners on base and you need the big hit, Mauricio Dubón is your guy. 23 of those RBI have come with runners in scoring position and 2 outs, which is second most in Major League Baseball, just one off of the big league lead. That's the kind of impact Mauricio Dubón has made. 7 homers and 42 runs knocked in 72 games played thus far, and it's not just at shortstop. He's been playing all over the place in the outfield. He can play multiple positions on the infield. He is the Swiss Army knife for the Braves. If they need to put somebody somewhere or have somebody out of the lineup for a couple of days or a little while, Mauricio Dubón can pretty much step in there and help you out. But he's on pace for a career high in RBI, which was 47 that he set back in 2024 in 137 games. Mauricio's on pace for 92 runs knocked in this year. And I sincerely hope that he gets there, because if he does, it probably means a lot of good things for the Braves, and it's also going to be a career season for, I think, somebody who's come in and really established himself as the quintessential teammate, as I called him a little bit earlier in the show. Let's hear a little bit from Mauricio Dubón himself, who was a huge part of Friday's win over Jacob Misiorowski. And the one thing that I'll say about Mauricio Dubón before we hear from him is that as much as you want to ask him questions about his big hit and his big moment and what he was able to do, Mauricio is very quick to turn the spotlight on all of the other guys who contributed in the game, and it was no different as he talked about the bad week that the Braves were coming, but what Martin Perez was able to do on the mound against one of the best pitchers in baseball. Here's Braves outfielder / shortstop / everything man, Mauricio Dubón.
We had a horrible week, man. From traveling to everything, being on the plane for 2 hours on the thing, and then rain delay after rain delay after rain delay. No rest, no this, 4 o'clock game, 1 o'clock game. No excuses. They expect you. Kitchen is hot. They expect you to cook. So it don't matter. But coming in and taking a break yesterday and resting a little bit, and we knew it was going to be a tough game. But thank God Martin gave us the chance to go out there and put a little bruise on him. Yeah,
Martin Perez gave them a big time boost, and that was just a question about what this week had been like and how big was that hit? How much did it lift off of the shoulders of the team collectively? And look, again, Martin is one of those guys that he's never just going to take it all for himself. And here's something else he said about that hit in particular, because I had to ask, and this was my question, is you have a knack for coming through in these situations, so how exactly do you do it? And, how big was this hit and that win for this club on Friday night? And here's what Dubón said.
People are going to be cliche and everything, but I always pray, man, before I go out there and everything. I go there and I say, oh, God, this is you right here to take care of it. And then, ended up coming through and everything. And, it's tough for me that trying to make it happen and trying to give him a win, and he gave us a chance. I mean, people don't realize, I got the hit, but he put zeros on the board. And the lineup that, they put the ball in play and they run, they hit home runs and everything. He gave us the chance. And, Mateo ran out that ball, you saw him limping after, and then first to third and then, Oli put in a great at-bat. I mean, it was a team effort, man. Like, I got the base hit and everything, but, everybody just put a grain of salt in the bullpen coming in, it's just a great win as a team.
Great win as a team. It's a team effort. I mean, these are the things. And like I said earlier, with Paul Bird trying to get an interview for Braves Vision right after the game with Mauricio Dubón, he's like, no, I got to bring my friend Eli White in here. And we got to talk to him because he had the huge play in the 9th inning. And a lot of things really added up on Friday. And a lot of things added up on Saturday. Ozzie Albies was the guy with the big hit on that day. But for Mauricio Dubón, it's just been the right guy at the right spot at the right time after time after time this year for the Braves. And they've needed that because they have operated for most of this season either without Ha-Seong Kim or without the version of Ha-Seong Kim that they were hoping that they signed in the offseason for $20 million this year. He tore a ligament in his finger in the offseason, missed all of spring training, missed a good portion of the season, and then was kind of thrust back into the lineup on a pretty regular basis for about 2 weeks when I think the Braves kind of realized all of a sudden, hey, this is not working right here, right now. We got to take a step back. We got to kind of mix and match here and figure out ways, I think, to balance this thing out. And that's kind of been the struggle, if you will. That may be a general term for what Walt Weiss is trying to do, the balancing act for trying to get offense from that position when you look at Ha-Seong Kim, who was 0 for 3 with 2 more strikeouts on Sunday against Milwaukee. He's 1 for his last 31. And 21 games this year, he's hitting under 100. But I guess the question is 21 games worth of very poor baseball enough for you to kind of look at it and decide, all right, well, we've had our fill? I don't think that it is. I think there are a lot of people that are obviously frustrated about it because Ha-Seong Kim's struggles have continued, and there's still a lot of season left to go here. And I don't think that he's necessarily surpassed that level where you can't expect anything out of him, nor do I think that the Braves have reached that level either. But there is this balancing act between these at-bats are valuable. We've got to give them to guys who can help us win, who can hit, who can, do the things they need to do. So it's trying to get a guy on track versus trying to win a baseball game that day. And I think Walt Weiss has had to handle that quite a bit. And he discussed Ha-Seong Kim's struggles and trying to help him out, and also, again, trying to help everyone out by winning that day's game. Here is Walt Weiss.
We've communicated quite a bit, and I told Kim, for me, it's that balance of trying to get him caught up to speed after missing spring training and missing a lot of time a year ago, and at the same time trying to play the hot hand and win games every night and trying to balance that, in my seat. That's what I've been dealing with. And, we know what kind of player he is and what kind of player he's been. And if we can get him back to that, our team is better for it. So that's the tightrope I've been walking. And with Acuña out, Dubon's playing a lot in the outfield. It opens up some things there. But, yeah, the plan is to get him back to being who he is. And when that happens, he's going to make us better.
And that's the hope, right? And that's not just hope's the only strategy they got. They're figuring out how to cover that position while Ha-Seong Kim continues to work through this. And nobody, obviously, is more frustrated about this than the player that has to kind of live through it. But this whole thing just kind of was exacerbated by the fact that you lost Ronald Acuña Jr. to the IL. And then you had Michael Harris II miss a few days, or a couple of days anyway, because of his second back issue, or maybe it's the same thing, but just a minor back issue that caused him to miss time. And you immediately have to move Mauricio Dubón, a Gold Glove level fielder, out into the outfield. And who does that leave covering shortstop? Well, it could be Ha-Seong Kim, or it could be Jorge Mateo, who I think, while maybe not the perfect answer or not a long-term answer, is a guy who's been giving you consistently better at-bats. And that, at this point, is something that you have to factor in, especially if your club is a little bit starved for offense, because Drake Baldwin has missed a number of weeks, and Ronald Acuña Jr. is not available to you, and Michael Harris is down for a couple of days. I mean, there are a lot of different factors in play here that make it difficult to have a guy who's struggling as much as Ha-Seong Kim has been. But Mateo's hitting .277 this year, 4 homers, 11 runs knocked in. He scored 25 runs in 48 games, and he showed off that elite speed that can change a game on Friday, could spark a rally for you. So those are some things to factor in there, is what kind of at-bats can you get and who can give them to you. And Walt Weiss is trying to do that. So we talked a little bit heading into break there about the Braves shortstop situation, the fact that Ha-Seong Kim has been struggling. You'd love to play Mauricio Dubón there, I think, more, and you have a lot this season, and he's definitely been part of the solution at that position. But he's been pressed into more play in the outfield with Ronald Acuña Jr. down and with Michael Harris nursing a back issue as well this week. So some reasons that Mauricio Dubón is not available for you as your everyday shortstop. And you've also got Jorge Mateo, who I've kind of been making a case for, stumping a little bit, that he's a guy that's been earning some at-bats, at least for right now, for the Braves to try to solve their shortstop issue. And as much as people have been talking about where exactly the Braves should be aiming as far as their aspirations of adding at least one starting pitcher, and who should that starting pitcher be, and the big conversation being all about Tarik Skubal being available, if, in fact, the Tigers decide that they do want to shop him. I'm still not convinced that he is absolutely 100% going to be available, but it does feel kind of inevitable that the Tigers are going to at least explore what it looks like as far as a return for a guy that should really, despite having elbow surgery this year, as he got that nanoscope procedure done, which is, I guess, a new procedure for removing loose bodies from the elbow that can have you back a lot faster. Tarik Skubal's already had that elbow surgery and is already pitching. Whereas you look back in spring training, and Spencer Schwellenbach, I believe he had bone chips in the elbow, but then Hurston Waldrop had the loose bodies, and it's taken him a long time to get back to pitching as he did the standard, the normal procedure. So it'll be interesting to see how that whole thing plays along in the future, and how many people get the same procedure that Tarik Skubal got, and if maybe like Tommy John surgery, Tarik Skubal's name gets slapped on this thing at some point, and it's the Tarik Skubal surgery that gets you back faster as far as the loose bodies are concerned. Either way, none of that has anything to do with what exactly the Tigers can get for him at the trade deadline, but suffice it to say, assuming that he's healthy, it's a lot. It's a king's ransom. That's what you're going to be paying for Tarik Skubal, who you will have for the remainder of this season before he hits free agency, although free agency is also in question because of what in the world the labor situation is going to look like for baseball. But for the purposes of this exercise, let's also put that over in the corner in a box that says open in November, because that's basically when we're going to start worrying about it. Who else could the Braves be aiming for as far as starting pitchers are concerned? We heard Logan Webb's name getting thrown around because the Giants could be doing some dealing and have a lot of players that I think could really bring back some prospect capital and help the Giants out if they decide that's the route that they want to go, because they have woefully underperformed this year. And then there's Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. That's a guy who's kind of intriguing and has multiple years of control, much like Logan Webb, who has more control than just being a straight-up rental. Is that the kind of pitcher that you would look at and say, okay, in October, this is an arm that I'd like to have out there on the mound for me, starting the most important games of the year alongside Chris Sale? I think you could make an argument for that. And I think that's really what the Braves are looking for, if we're being greedy about it, or even realistic, is how are you best set up to handle the onslaught of October baseball? Having a great bullpen is one part of it, and the Braves have done that. You got a check mark on the necessary boxes that you need as far as your bullpen's concerned. But if you're going to push those chips in, like I was talking about for October, it, I think, is going to hinge heavily on what your starting rotation is able to do. And the Braves have run into this problem year after year after year, beginning, I think, in, 2020? Just not having starting pitching when you need it. It happened in the shortened season of 2020. It happened during the Braves World Series run in 2021. They ran out of starting pitchers by the time they got to the latter games of the World Series and basically had Max Fried and Ian Anderson and nothing else. And then in 2022, you ran into the same problems. You had, I think it was Max Fried was sick, and then Spencer Strider had strained his oblique. So when he came back, he wasn't that version of Spencer Strider. The pitching plan went bad in 2022. It went bad again in 2023, much the same. By 2024, you were just trying to get into a wild card series, and then Chris Sale had back spasms. You didn't have to worry about it last year because the Braves weren't anywhere close to the playoffs, but the pitching come October is a situation I think the Braves would very much like to have a better handle on, even though you cannot predict health and you cannot guarantee anything on the health in the health department. You'd at least like to have the most quality options that you can find. So the Braves, I think at this trade deadline, will be out there looking for guys who can bolster the rotation and maybe guys who can help front that rotation. And I would say Tarik Skubal is definitely public, not even public enemy, but candidate number one. And then you can start looking at others like Logan Webb, if the Giants want to trade him. Joe Ryan, if the Twins decide they want to trade him. They may not trade Byron Buxton from everything that you hear. But Joe Ryan, they could. And they traded 10 guys at the deadline last year. So don't think for a second that the Twins are just they're picking their spots in terms of trades. They'll trade a whole team's worth of players. But you got to give them the right offer. Now, what does that offer look like? I think we'll find out in about 6 weeks, maybe earlier. But a lot of teams, as I talked about with Chad Bishop of the AJC a little bit earlier on the show, are not going to be ready to just fold early before the trade deadline when a winning streak could get them right back into it. And that brings me to the shortstop position, which is kind of where we were going before. But there's a lot of talk about Jeremy Pena of the Astros, really talented 28-year-old shortstop, coming off a career year last year, having another good year this year. He's under contract through 2027 through arbitration, though it's going to be a nice little chunk of money, probably somewhere, if the current situation were in play, in that $17 to $20 million range. He's making about 9.75 maybe this year. Final year of arbitration next year. Could be a $20 million player. We'll see how that all plays out. But is he available, I think, is a question we have to ask ourselves. The Braves and Astros have made some trades over the years, not the least of which was Mauricio Dubón. But the Astros, for all the things that have gone wrong this year, are only 3 games out in the AL West. So who's to say, and the Astros did this, last year or the year before, when they looked kind of DOA in the middle of the summer, then all of a sudden they caught fire and, ran down whoever was in front in the AL West. Stranger things have happened than the Astros get into October. So I don't know that they're necessarily going to look at Jeremy Pena, especially with a year left, and say, yeah, we don't really think we're going to do much this year or next year, so we'll trade our shortstop. I'd be interested to see how that all plays out. The Astros may not be a very complete team, but can they make a run to the playoffs? And is that something that they would value more so than trading away Jeremy Pena? These are the questions that we can spend the next 6 weeks talking about and trying to figure out. But some questions that the Braves have had throughout this season is, how many catchers does it take to replace Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy? Well, the answer of how many catchers does it take to fill the position for the Braves this year is a franchise record 8. They just got Drake Baldwin back off the injured list. We know all about him, but the Braves went through a number of different backups and trying to fill in for Baldwin while he was on the injured list for the better part of 3 or nearly 3.5 weeks with that strained oblique. And the most recent guy to come in is Joey Bart, a name that folks around here may know. He went to Georgia Tech. He's from up in Buford, so a local kid, very excited to join the Atlanta Braves. And Walt Weiss talked a little bit about what exactly Joey Bart adds to the Braves catching situation with Drake Baldwin back in the mix, but a little bit more behind Drake Baldwin was something the Braves, I think, were looking for.
Yeah, I like Joey Bart. I remember last year we couldn't get him out playing for the Pirates. There's offensive potential there. He's been really good against left-hand pitching. He's a solid catcher. It's a good story, coming back home. So I'm sure that's he's really enjoying that. So, but yeah, I like him. It's a talented guy, and there's some offensive potential there.
Now, Joey Bart was the number 2 pick in the 2018 draft. He's hit 13 homers in a big league season before, as recently as 2 years ago with the Pirates, when it seemed like maybe he'd figured some stuff out. Had about an 800 OPS. Then last year, ceded a little bit of playing time, has dealt with some injuries as well, was dealing with a foot issue this year, and then ultimately the Braves were able to pick him up from the Pirates and just add him as a backup for them. That, look, as much as you like Sandy Leon and what he was able to do behind the plate, and particularly with the ABS system, it wasn't necessarily a problem that had been solved if you don't have Drake Baldwin and you don't have Sean Murphy. The Braves needed to figure something out there, and Joey Bart, who's, 29 years old, could factor in a little bit more as the backup catcher who could play a little bit extra when you need him to, and somebody that can take the pressure off of Drake Baldwin to have to do as much catching with no Sean Murphy around. And look, Drake Baldwin, having him back is great, and he came back and showed you exactly who he is with the first swing, 473 feet to dead center, and that was a beautiful thing. But a very brief one-day rehab assignment with Gwinnett. The rain impacted that as well, but it's been a pretty rough stretch for Baldwin overall since he came back on Tuesday. He's 2 for 22 with that home run and 11 strikeouts across those 22 at-bats. That is not normal vintage Drake Baldwin. It's been pretty tough sledding for him. He usually does not swing and miss that much, so hopefully he's going to be able to sort that whole thing out. But as far as injuries and different things the Braves have been trying to deal with, getting Baldwin back should help you with the absence of Ronald Acuña Jr., who is not returning in the 10-day window for his IL stint, so he'll continue to remain on the injured list. How long he'll be sidelined with the second instance of a strained hamstring. Missed 15 games the first time. How many this time around? He's only missed 8, but in order to get to the other side of the All-Star break, if you're trying to be ultra cautious with him, would be 28 games. And I'm not sure the Braves are necessarily looking at it as something for a grade 1 strain that should keep you out that long. But as we've talked about week after week here, you kind of have to err on the side of caution, give him some extra time in hopes that this won't crop back up. But there's still no guarantee that a few extra days or an extra week or what have you is going to keep Ronald Acuña Jr. or any player from suffering some kind of injury. But I can tell you the Braves are better with him than they are without him. And certainly offensively speaking, even in a year where Ronald hasn't knocked your socks off and done some of the things that he's been known to do, that potential is still in there. And he's still leading the club in on-base percentage. And he does hit leadoff. So it is nice to have a guy that gets on base, but you got to have him in the lineup. And the Braves certainly would benefit from having Ronald Acuña Jr. back. We'll see when exactly that is and how cautious the Braves want to be with it. I certainly understand it because you don't want to make this nagging injury even worse. But they are, of course, trying to win some games, and you do have to at least look over your shoulder a little bit with this much time left and decide whether or not you're worried about the Philadelphia Phillies sneaking up on you. I don't know that they're necessarily spending a lot of time thinking about that, but you can't completely disregard it either. And the goal with the Braves is always win the game, win the series, and move on to the next one. Speaking of which, coming up for the Braves, it is a 3-game series against the San Diego Padres. Monday, 10:10 p.m. Eastern Time is Game 1. They'll play at 9:40 on Tuesday, 8:40 on Wednesday. So it gets better day after day as far as not having to stay up quite as late. So that'll be fun. Probables for that series against the Padres is Grant Holmes in Game 1. It'll be J.R. Ritchie in Game 2, and then Martin Perez will pitch the third game for the Braves in San Diego. There's an off day on Thursday. And then on Friday, you've got the San Francisco Giants playing host to the Braves for a 3-game series at 10:15 first pitch on Friday, 9:05 on Saturday, 4:05 on Sunday. So about the time we're talking to you this time a week from now, we'll know how that series went. But we've seen some West Coast trips go poorly for the Braves. We've also seen earlier this year a trip out west that went very well for the Braves. And we're hoping for the latter, I think, if you're Atlanta, trying to get kind of back on track after what was a very challenging run of series against the White Sox, against the Mets, and against the Giants. Some injuries were thrown in there, some rain delays, some bad travel. Got back on track against the Brewers this week, but can they continue that momentum against a Padres team that all of a sudden is looking up at the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are starting to run away with the National League West. And that wasn't that way when this month got started. So for the Padres, they're trying to climb a little bit and keep it manageable, but that may be easier said than done with that Dodgers team, because once they get going, we know they may not stop until they get back to the World Series, because that is a place they know very well. That's going to wrap us up for this edition of From the Diamond. We'll be back next Sunday for 2 hours of Braves and baseball talk here on From the Diamond. Until then, so long, everyone.